Well, this time of year, many young people are going off to college. They're moving away from home for the very first time, and they're living in a new city. Now, I grew up in New York, and I went to New York University, so I didn't have that experience. But many of my classmates did. And I remember one guy who was in my class in freshman year. His name was Roger, and he was from Kansas. And he was so wide-eyed and excited about living in New York City. And I remember riding the subway with Roger for the very first time. We were sitting in the subway car, and a woman came on, and she was carrying luggage, wheelies. And she came and sat down near us. And Roger immediately began to engage her in conversation. He said, "So you're going on a trip? Where you're going? I hope it's someplace fun." And the woman didn't look at Roger or reply. She simply took her wheelies and she moved to the far end of the car. Then another time, Roger and I entered a crowded elevator together, and he said to everyone on the elevator, "How's everybody doing today?" And nobody responded, and everybody looked down at the ground. And I tried to explain to Roger that New York is an overcrowded city. It's a busy, fast-paced city. And that people really don't have time for small talk. Everyone's kind of in their own little insular world. And I told him that it's really important to keep conversation really succinct and to a bare minimum. And I gave him the example of ordering pizza in a pizza place. It goes something like this. You walk in and the guy behind the counter says, "Yeah," and you say, "Slice." And he says, "Plain," and you say, "Pepperoni." And he says, "Drink," and you say, "Coke." And he says, "Small," and you say, "Large." And he says, "Fajita," and you say, "To go." So, it's all very quick. There's not a lot of time for small talk. You want to get in and get out. Now, I don't mean to give New Yorkers a bad rap, because I've seen New Yorkers do some amazing things. And I especially see that when there are tourists who are lost and need some help. I've seen it with people when their cars break down. And of course, all of us saw after 9/11 the way New Yorkers really cared for one another. Now, I share all of this with you because it got me thinking that all of us are kind of like New Yorkers when it comes to our relationship with God. Is that we are so busy in our day, we've got our own stuff to get done, and we're trying to get through all of our tasks that we don't really take time to make eye contact with God, to communicate with God. And the only times that we do are when there are times in our life, like the tourists in New York, when we're lost. Then we'll look to God. Or if we have a breakdown, like those car breakdowns, when our life is breaking down, then and only then will we look to God. Or when we're experiencing a crisis in our life. Then we want to make eye contact, we want to look at God, and we want to communicate with God. But you know, even when we do at those times communicate with God, we often do so very closed. Like even in our prayer, we're hunched over and our palms are pressed together so tightly and clenched. Meditation teaches us just the opposite. In meditation, you're taught to pray with your spine erect, not hunched over, and you're taught to pray with your palms open on your lap. You're saying, "I am open. I'm open, not closed. I'm open." And that's what today's gospel is all about. Jesus is saying to us, be open. Throughout your day, there are some amazing, incredible things. Miracles are happening in your life every day. But you're so closed to them in your own little insular world. And Jesus is calling us to be open so that we can see them and understand them in a new way. Now, in our words of integration this morning, we learned about the 4 levels of understanding that the ancient Jewish mystics used. And thank you to Robert for saying those Hebrew words so well. The first level of understanding is the lowest level. It's the surface level. It's the literal meaning. Sadly, most Christians today understand Scripture at the lowest level. So for them, today's gospel means, oh yeah, there was a man who physically couldn't hear anything, and Jesus came and he put his finger in his ear, and then the guy could hear. That's how they understand it. It happened 2,000 years ago, and they're super comfortable with that. Okay? The ancient Jewish mystics, though, and remember, Jesus was one of them. They wanted us to go up the levels. And so the second level is the symbolic meaning. The symbolic meaning of this story might be there was a man who spiritually did not have any understanding. And that Jesus took spit, saliva, the word, his speech, his teachings, and opened the man's understanding so that he could understand spiritual things in a new way. We know that Jesus taught in parables. They were made-up stories. So doesn't it make sense that the followers of Jesus would also teach us in stories? So they wanted us to get to the second level, the symbolic level, but they didn't want us to stop there. They wanted us to get to the third level, the level of feeling, which means, okay, now that I've made meaning of this story in my head, I now want to move it to my heart. How does this make me feel? And that's why it's important for us, and I know many of you do this throughout your week, is you take the gospel passage that we read on Sunday, and you bring it with you to your morning prayer every morning. And read it over and over and see how you can bring it to your heart. But then the ancient Jewish mystics said there's even a level higher than that. It's the highest level, and it's the level of doing. Judaism is the most practical religion. It's not about preparing for the next life. It's about this one. And Jesus was a Jew, so he lived the same way. It's about the here and now. What can I do now? And so the fourth level, the highest level, says, how do I apply this teaching to my life now? If I just stay on the lowest level, the surface level, then I'm like, oh yeah, Jesus did that 2,000 years ago. Wasn't he an amazing guy? The fourth level says, okay, Jesus did that. What does it make me do now? How do I apply it to my life? So it might be that you may be thinking to yourself in prayer, oh yeah, maybe I need to open up my ears. Maybe I need to be open to some things that I'm not listening to. Maybe I need to open my mind to a higher level of understanding. In the first reading today, the reading from James, we hear that. What good is the idea if you don't put an action behind it? If you don't do anything about it, then it's kind of worthless. So Jesus today, in today's gospel, when he says be opened, he's not just talking to that deaf man, he is talking to us today. Now in today's gospel, interestingly enough, it starts off with Jesus being closed-minded. When he first gets to that city, he's like a New Yorker. He doesn't want anybody to see him or notice him. He wants to be left alone. And that woman is so persistent, the woman whose daughter is disturbed. She's so persistent, and she tracks him down, and she's begging for help. And this is a Jesus that we don't really see a lot, and it makes us very uncomfortable because Jesus is really cold to her. New Yorker cold. She's begging him, please, and he says, get in line. Here to serve the children first. Because the woman is not a Jew. The woman is a foreigner. She's a Gentile. Jesus in his closed-minded understanding, thought that his purpose was to be for the Jews, for his tribe. His mind was closed. Now this is interesting for us because many of us came to the belief that Jesus, right as a baby, there in the manger, understood his purpose. And maybe that wasn't the case. Jesus didn't begin his ministry until the age of 30. So his whole life up until then, he was doing what we're doing. Discovering, what is my purpose? What is my reason for being? And here he is at this stage of the game thinking, well, yes, I've been given these gifts to teach and to heal, but only for these people. And this woman's faith opens up Jesus' mind to say, oh, my ministry, my purpose is for all people. And notice what happens. He doesn't go to the daughter. He doesn't leave and go to the daughter's bed and put his hands on the daughter like the woman asked for. How was the daughter healed? The woman's faith healed her. Jesus didn't heal her. Jesus didn't do it. The woman's faith did it. So, if we are to do what the ancient Jewish mystics said and take this story and move up the levels, the fourth level might be, what in my life right now needs healing? And do I believe that I possess the power by the strength of my faith to do the healing and to make the miracle happen? If you notice at the end of the gospel, Jesus tells everybody, please don't tell people that I got that deaf man here. And of course they don't listen. And again, it's the same thing today. We have Christians who all they want to do is talk about Jesus. Jesus didn't want that. It's about you. It's not about him. It's about you. Jesus would say to you, don't talk about me. Take my teachings and do them. So we see here at this stage of the game that Jesus himself is opening up his mind and understanding. And I think that's a great example for all of us because he's asking us to do the same. Now this Friday is the anniversary of 9/11. And many of you know that when I lived in New York, that I worked with Father Michael Judge. Father Michael Judge is the first recorded casualty of 9/11. And they made a documentary about his life. It's called The Saint of 9/11. And you can get it on Netflix. I highly recommend it. Father Michael was a New Yorker, but he was very different from the New Yorkers that I first started talking about this morning. Father Michael wasn't closed. He was open. He was open every day to where God was leading him. And God was leading him to the World Trade Center on 9/11 to go and to care for the people who were trying to escape from the towers. And when they fell, he was the first person to die, the first recorded casualty. And when I worked with Father Michael in New York as a young brother, he taught us a prayer. It was a prayer he himself said each morning, and it was a prayer of openness. And he said, this is the prayer, it's just 4 lines, it's so simple. He said, Lord, today, take me where you want me to go. Take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and keep me out of your way. Okay? Just this beautiful prayer of openness. You know, we wake up each morning and we've got the agenda of all the things that we want to do. I got to get this done, I got to get this done, I got to get this done, I got to meet this person, and this person. Father Michael was saying every morning, God, just today take me where you want me to go, and let me meet who you want me to meet. It's that beautiful openness. And that's when Jesus says, Ephphatha,